Jai Swaminarayan, Om Namo Narayanaya, Namaste, welcome back. Today I would like to finish up the Mundaka Upanishad lecture by Swami Vivekananda. Got a few pages here, so I'm just going to hold my comments till afterwards and just to try to do this whole thing and not make the video too long. The Mundaka Upanishad starts by telling us that those who know nothing better than a little road making or a little hospital building and such good works will have a good dream when they die. They will dream that they are in a place where they will have god bodies, for example. Or maybe they can eat anything they like, or jump about, or go through walls. Who knows what they may dream? And maybe even come down to earth and talk to one of us. In our mythology, there are the Devas, who live in heaven, and the Devakas, who are very much the same but a little more wicked. The Devas are like your angels, only some of them from time to time become wicked and find that the daughters of men are good. Our deities are celebrated for this sort of thing. I mean, what can you expect of them? They are here, simply hospital makers, and have no more knowledge than other men. They do their good work for fame or name or some reward and get this reward, dreaming that they are in heaven and doing all these things. Then there are demons who have done evil in this life, but our books say that these dreams will not last very long, and then they will either come back and take the old dream again as humans or maybe find something worse. Therefore, according to these books, it behooves every sensible right-thinking man, once and for all, to brush aside all the foolish ideas as heaven and hell. Two things exist in this world, dream and reality. What we call life is a succession of dreams, dream within dream. One dream is called heaven, another is earth, another is hell, etc., etc. One dream is the human body, another is the animal, and so on. All of these things are dreams. The reality is what is called Brahman, that being who is existence, knowledge, and bliss. He is the guru who wants to go beyond this self-hypnotism and get rid of all these dreams, to stand aside and know his own true nature. When we desire, we are hypnotizing ourselves. Just as I desire I will go to heaven, that hypnotizes me, and I begin to then find I am in heaven directly when I die, and also the angels and all those things that are found in heaven. I have seen about 50 people who have come from death's door, and they all have told me stories about being in heaven. These are mythologies of our country, and it shows that this is all hypnotism. Where Western people make a great mistake here, so far as you have these ideas of heaven and hell, we agree with you, that's fine, but you say that the earth is real. That cannot be. If this is real, heaven and hell is real, because the proof of each of these is the same. If one is in a hypnotic condition, the whole of it must be so. Vedantists say that not only are heavens hypnotic, but so is this life and everything here. Some people want to go from one hypnotic condition to another, and these are what we call the fools of this world. The travelers who go from dream to dream, from one hypnotic trance to another. For their entire life, they are under the idea that they are men and women. What nonsense is this? A man or woman in the soul? It is terrible hypnotism. How can a soul have a sex? It is self-hypnotism that makes us think so. You have hypnotized yourself and think that you are a man or a woman. If we are fools, we will again hypnotize ourselves and want to go to heaven and hear all this trash of gods and goddesses and all this sort of humbug. And then we will kneel down and pray and have our god bodies and we'll come and visit the earth, and it just goes on and on. We are all in the same boat here. That is the truth. And all who are in the same boat see each other. We are beyond dream and hypnotism. We are all in the same boat here, all of us at this lecture. And we all see each other. We have stood aside from hypnotism and are beyond dreams. Some fools have hypnotized themselves that they have bodies and wives and these things. I am also a fool and have hypnotized myself that I have senses and all these things. I confess that. You may be in a state of hypnotism where there are 3 books sitting in front of you, yet you may see Only two. You may live for a year seeing only two books. Some people will never realize that there are three books before them. The Vedanta philosophy says that this whole universe, mental, physical, moral, is hypnotic. Who is the cause of this hypnotism? You yourself are to blame. This weeping and wailing and knocking your heads in the corners will not do you the least good. However, knocking everything that is hypnotic on the head leads to what is called non-attachment, and clinging more and more to hypnotism is attachment. That is why in all religions you will find they want to give up on the world, although many of them do not understand it. These fellows used to starve themselves in a forest and see the devil coming to them. You've heard these wonderful stories of India, of how these magicians can make a man see a rope rise from the ground to the skies. I haven't seen any of these things happen. But supposedly there was a Mogul emperor who mentions it. He says, "Allah, what do these devils do? They take a rope or a chain, and the chain is thrown up and up until it becomes firm, as if it were stuck to something. Then they let the cat go up the chain, then a dog, then a wolf, and then a tiger, and then a lion, and all walk up that chain and vanish. Sometimes they will send men up the chain. Two men will go up and begin to fight, and then both of them vanish. And after a while you hear the noise of fighting. And mind you, there are 2,000 to 3,000 people suddenly present. This fellow showing it has only a loincloth on." They say this is hypnotism, throwing a net over an audience so they believe something that they never really saw. This is what they call their science. It exists within a certain limit. But if you go beyond this limit or come within it, you do not see it. The man who is playing does not see anything, so if you stand near him, you do not see anything. Such is the hypnotism here. So we have first to get beyond the circle, or stand within the circle of hypnotism, with God, the great player who is playing all these things. The whole universe he projects. Now this is all called Maya, the power which creates all these tremendous things. He who is the ruler of the Maya is God, and he who is ruled by Maya is the soul. Just as in the case of the chains, the man in the loincloth was standing in the center, had the power, and was not deluded, but all that audience was governed by Maya, and believed a foolish story. So that portion of Atman which was Maya is called God, and the little bits of Atman deluded by it are called souls. You and I. Okay? It is said that if you crawl nearer and nearer to the hypnotist, when you get to the center, you do not see anything. You get clear of all of it. Now the yogi does not care to undergo all this trouble. It is a dangerous way. Unless a man becomes a lunatic, when he finds himself covered with mud, will he take more mud to wash himself? So why increase the hypnotism? Get out of the circles, cut it off, and be free. When you are free, you will be able to play even without being caught yourself. Now you are caught, then you will catch, and that will be the difference. Therefore, in the first part of the Mundaka Upanishad, we were told that we must give up all this idea of heaven and birth and hell and all these things. It is all nonsense. No man was ever born or ever died. They are all in hypnotism. So it is eternal life, and all this nonsense too. Heaven is hypnotism, and so is the earth. It is not as materialists say, that heaven is a superstition and God is a superstition, but he himself is not a superstition. If one is a superstition, if one link is non-existent, the whole chain is non-existent. The existence of the whole chain depends on the existence of one link, and that of one link on the whole. If there is no heaven, there is no earth, and there is no God, and there is no man. You are under this hypnosis, and as long as you are under it, you will have to see God and nature and the soul, and when you go beyond it, God will vanish. So will the soul and nature and the rest of it. Therefore, first of all, we will have to give up on all these ideas of God and heaven and other things and enjoying the fruits of this life, and all that going to heaven will be just one more dream for us. Next, after showing these things, the Mundaka Upanishad goes on to tell us how to get out of the hypnotism. And the one idea that is brought out through all these ideas is to become one with the universal being. The thing manifested is not anything of these. It is not part of Maya, but that upon which all these things are being played out. The background upon which all this picture, this Maya, is being written. We must become one with him. You know you are one with him, but you must realize it. He gave us two words. One is intellectual knowledge, and the other is realization. That is to say, intellectual assent is within this realization, and realization is beyond it. Therefore, intellectual assent is not sufficient. Every man can say that the theory is right, but that is not realization. He must realize it. We can all say we understand that this is hypnotism. I'm sure we all do. But that is not actually realization. That will come when the hypnotism will break, even for a moment. That's all it takes. It will come in a flash. It must come. If you struggle, it will come. When it does vanish, all the idea of the body will go along with it, just as a lamp blows out. Then what will become of you? If some part of your karma remains, this world will come back again, but not with the same force. You have known that it is what it is. You will know no more bondage. So long as you have eyes, you will have to see, or ears, you will have to hear, but not with the same force. So I have read all sorts of things about the mirage, but I have never seen it before until about 4 years ago when I was traveling in Western India. Of course, as a sannyasin, I was traveling on foot, and it takes a very long time, so it took me about a month to travel through that country. Every day I saw such beautiful lakes and the shadows of the trees and the shores of all those lakes, and the whole thing was quivering in this breeze, and there was birds flying, and it was just beautiful. Every day I saw this and thought, what a beautiful country I live in. But when I reached a village, I found it was all sand. I said, how is this so? One day I was very thirsty and thought I would drink a little water at the lake, but when I approached it, it disappeared. And with a flash the thought came to my mind, this is the mirage which I have read about all my life. But the strange thing is that I was traveling for a month and could never recognize it as a mirage, and in one moment it vanished. I was very glad to know that this was the mirage about which I had read all my life. The next morning, I saw the lake again. Along with it came the idea, this is a mirage. All that month I had been seeing the mirage and could not distinguish between reality and mirage, but in that moment I caught the idea. From that moment, when I see a mirage, I always say, this is a mirage, and I never feel it. Such will it be with this world when the whole thing will vanish once, and after that, if you have to live out your past work, you will not be deceived. Take a carriage with two wheels. Suppose I cut one of the wheels from the axle. The other wheel will run for some time by its past momentum, and then it will fail. The body is one wheel, and the soul another, and they are joined by the axle of delusion. Knowledge is the axe which will cut the axle, and the soul will stop immediately. This will give up all these vain dreams. But upon the body is that past momentum, and it will run a little, doing this and that, and then it will fall down. But only good momentum will be left, and that body can only do good. This is to warn you not to mistake a rascal for a free man. It will be impossible for that free man to do evil, so you must not be cheated. When you become free, the whole hypnotism has vanished, and you know the distinction between the reality and the mirage. The mirage will be no more bondage. The most terrible things will not be able to daunt you. A mountain could fall upon you, but you will not care, for you know it will be just a mirage. And here ended Swami Vivekananda's lecture. So the skeptic in me sees that he's talking about how he was traveling for a month, which he did do, and he saw a mirage of a lake, wanted to drink, but then discovered there was nothing there. I have heard that same story told of people in the desert who are starving and they're thirsty and their mind starts playing tricks on them. They see a lake. There is nothing there because it's just their mind. There is also stories of people who are in mountains or in cold places and they're freezing to death, but their mind starts to trick them and they start tearing their clothes off because they think they're overheating, because their mind and body is compensating in this way. And then they take the clothes off and they end up freezing even more. We know it's not a mystical thing. This is a mind and body thing. Yet when he tells the story, the first thing that came into my mind was, maybe you're just seeing a mirage because you weren't drinking enough? And this is not a mystical experience in the least. It's just actually a very scientifically well-documented experience that happens to people that maybe in your time was not so well-documented, which debunks his own philosophy. On the other hand, he does confess that since that time, he has had a realization that has affected him, that he is aware of the mirage, and he is aware of things. So, he may not have had a mystical experience. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. I read this kind of skeptically. But maybe he didn't have a mystical experience. Maybe he just had strange body-mind, starvation, dehydration effects going on. But he had a profound experience from it that changed his life. And then a realization occurred. So the body-mind suffering, while it is a normal occurrence, actually created a spiritual change that lasted with him 4 years later. Now that's interesting. That's something very interesting. It's sort of like the starvation or the dehydration, while it wasn't spiritual, it was more like a penance or more like doing some yogic thing. It purified him, and then he had this realization. So I think of folks I've seen out there in the world, and they're like, oh yes, I had this realization. I was smoking pot, and I was sitting on the hood of my car and looked up at the stars, and I realized that stars aren't stars but suns, and that they're all suns, and Jesus, he's the sun. So, Jesus is a star. Oh, sounds good. I've heard stories like this review. I'm making this up. You know what I mean. People tell these stories. But have you ever met this person years later and wondered, well, how did that profoundly affect you? You're sitting here pontificating on some great spiritual experience you had, but what happened afterwards? That's the question. Did anything happen? If nothing did, it was just an experience. To take it the next level, though, to make a lifelong change from that is what Swami Vivekananda did. Now that's almost a miracle. That's almost a miracle. So what I'm saying is, maybe he didn't have a spiritual experience where he saw a lake and whatever. Maybe he had just dehydration. And I actually suffer from dehydration, matter of fact. I've had stroke many, many times, and my mind goes bonkers. So I'm skeptical on stories like this. But it turned into a revelation that changed his life. I am saying that's a rare thing and a miracle. Many of us pontificate on things we've had happen to us, but did it change our life? Did it really change our life? Or is it just a good story to show off to people? That's why I'm reading this guy. I think I mentioned when I first started this series, his letters, which are well worth reading. We have them published in the 9-volume set that I'm reading from, and they're just amazing because he was just so down to earth and very simple things which most of us will pontificate upon. Look at what I did and tell me how godly I am. No, he just took it and digested it and churned it back out and made these simple things into more than just stories, but into little miracles that changed his life and changed the world. That's what makes him great. Whether it was a spiritual experience or not, what he did with it. Here we are, over a century later, because of that experience. So there we go. Did that make sense in the end? I don't know. I hope so. Anyways, until next time, we'll be reading another lecture of his. I have a few more here. And thank you. Jai Shri Krishna, Jai Shri Swaminarayan, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.